So you're probably aware that the dominant medical paradigm for quite a long while now, in fact, probably ever since we, formulated the materialist kind of philosophy and became entranced by it collectively on a cultural or the civilizational level, that has been the materialistic paradigm and materialistic medicine, which is the paradigm of genetics, genetic determinism, genetic randomness. Materialistic, thoroughly reductionist. The idea in that paradigm is that genes just do their thing randomly. Sometimes they randomly malfunction. Adaptation happens randomly. There's no intelligence behind any of it. And we're focused on trying to cure things and function reductively. We treat the body as a machine, like a car that breaks down when something goes wrong with it, and we try to repair the part or replace it or whatever. And then we kind of started figuring out, hey, wait a minute, the conscious mindset starts to actually become a thing. It actually is a factor in our health, our state of health, and our healing processes, and that we can actually use our intentionality to affect change, biochemical change in our own bodies. And so we started hitting on this era 2. We started to move into era 2, where we're like, okay, so there's the materialistic thing, and then there's this other thing. There's this mind aspect. There's this sort of the entrance of consciousness into the equation. And I think we began to formulate that around the beginning of the 20th century, so the early 1900s, say. And that was roughly when they were formulating the pioneers of psychosomatic medicine, like Freud and Alfred Adler. They were formulating and pioneering that part of the paradigm, psychosomatic paradigm. So we've got era 2 now, and that's where we get we start incorporating the idea of energy, and this is where you start seeing all sorts of these alternative practitioners and energy workers, spiritual healers, pranic healing, Reiki, and all this kind of stuff. And we're acknowledging there is a role and a place for consciousness. This paradigm it has a lot to do with the acknowledgement of positive thinking now. So era 1 was all about physical power. It was all mechanical. Era 2 is incorporating the idea of mindset and positivity. It's still brain-based and brain-centered as opposed to body-centric, where era 1 was. So we've come over into giving the brain a role in our own healing processes. And it's a personal process now. We're taking ownership to some extent. We're claiming our own agency in the process of health and healing. It's individualistic as opposed to animalistic, which is where the era 1 genetic paradigm left us. And now we're talking about the question of nature versus nurture. And in era 2, we've moved into an understanding that nurture actually plays a humongous role. And the truth is that, this is where we get epigenetics from, right? So epigenetics, this is era 2 medicine. The idea that the environment determines genetic expression, which to a massive extent it does. Thought patterns, emotions, light, sound, darkness, weather, exposure to electromagnetic fields, all sorts of stuff influences genetic expression. Food you eat, nutrition, obviously. So that's era 2 in a nutshell. And then in, say, the last, 30 years-ish, we've started to move into era 3, and we've started developing this new paradigm. And this is the paradigm that has called me into it. So I've been working within this space for 7 or 8 years. This is a paradigm, era 3, where we acknowledge the power and the reality of, quote, spirit, and it actually is moving from the power of positive thinking over to the power of positive feeling. So we're actually recognizing now that emotions are in a sense more powerful than the mind, the mental body. They're more elemental. They bring a certain fire with them that the mind at the mental level can't quite match. And this paradigm, era 3, is actually non-local. So it's transpersonal. We've moved from era 1, impersonal, to era 2, personal, into era 3, which is transpersonal. So now we're recognizing, okay, consciousness is the king. It's the foundation of reality. We all exist in a matrix of consciousness, and everything that happens as an interplay with this field in a dynamic relationship with this infinite field of consciousness. And this is conceived or conceptualized as the sound domain, and it's the inverse of space-time. So where we talk about space-time in era 2 epigenetics, Era 3 flips it over to time-space, the realm of time, movement through time, as opposed to movement through space. So this is now, we're focusing on potential DNA, that is junk, so-called junk DNA, jumping genes, transposons, retrotransposons, and their capacity to be fluid and malleable and actually remodel the genome based on the input of our consciousness that is beyond the level of simple willpower and positive thinking, but utilizing the power of positive feeling, the coherence that is generated through a heart-centered state or a bliss state. And we're also recognizing the basic reality that we are actually capable now in this paradigm of interacting, say, as a sound healer. I don't like that term, but let's just roll with it. I can interact with, say, a client who happens to live on Mars, for example, because in this paradigm, we understand that space and time are not barriers. They are actually not obstacles to a connection, because the connection happens in the non-local field. This is transpersonal medicine. So we can actually connect through the unified field instantaneously, regardless of distance, through a combination of the correct feeling state, a heart-centered state, bliss state, combined with conscious intent. So you've got to have those two components really to really capitalize on and exploit the unified field, the non-locality of the holographic medium that we live in. So you need a clear intent, and you also need the coherence of positive feeling. And now you can actually influence people who want to be influenced by you in a healing or sort of healing dynamic or relationship over arbitrarily large distances. So they could be on the other side of the universe. It doesn't actually matter, because space is kind of actually a perceptual artifact we created through the way that our particular physiology and biology perceives and decodes information coming in at us. And the same goes for time, obviously. Time's a human construct. So in a nutshell, you've kind of moved from era 1, where we've got genetic fatalism, you can't do anything about your gene expression, it's just bad luck, sorry, over to era 2, where it's like, actually, we have a level of control and capacity to intervene and intercede here. So it's genetic self-determinism. Over into era 3 now, where I like to live, which is, quote, intelligent design, right? So we're understanding that there is a conscious field that harbors a blueprint, if you like, for the human body, for every form that exists, and that we can deviate from that blueprint, through the stresses and travails of life on planet Earth. But we can also utilize positive feeling and that coherence that the heart-centered state brings us. We can combine it with particular sound frequencies and our intentionality, and we can realign ourselves with the blueprint that exists in time-space in the unified field. That's where I'm living, guys, and that was actually a large part of the talk that we had in How to Evolve Yourself. And I was opening the door to conscious people who are sufficiently educated and open-minded to actually step in through the door into the arena with me, where we actually facilitate their accelerated evolution, utilizing a very special era 3 modality.